Hey guys, today I'd like us to talk a little bit about vaccinations, why they're important, and why there's so much controversy around it. First of all, this gets to the very heart of parenting. We think when we take this job that it's going to be pretty straightforward. We'll have decisions, and when there's decisions, we'll just make the good choice instead of the bad choice. Turns out in parenting, that's not actually the way it works out. In parenting, what it turns out we have is a ton of great choices that we don't really like either choice that much. In this case, it's pretty straightforward. We have choice one is where the doctor is going to take a needle and poke it into our precious baby and then inject some questionable substance. And then the other choice is we're going to put our child at risk of some potentially terrible disease that we've never seen before. And so we don't really like either one of those choices. And what good parenting is, it's taking those two great choices and picking the one that you hate the least. And you'll have this over and over during the raising of your children. But for here, it makes it pretty tough. How tough it is came to the surface for me a couple of weeks ago. I had a young dad come in with a little 2-month-old baby girl and his lovely wife, and just a sweet, sweet family. And he said, "Doc, I got to tell you, I am scared to death of the idea of giving my daughter these vaccines. But I don't want my fear to keep me from doing the right thing for my daughter. So help me do the right thing." And that just brought home how tough it is to be a parent. But I want us to talk a little bit about how you can do the right thing. The real question is, how do we get such a bad name anyway with this vaccination stuff? And it really boils down to the fact that bad things just happen. And especially if you have a brand new complicated machine, which your baby is, and has lots of moving parts, if there's going to be some problems come up, you're likely to find them in the first year. And the problem with vaccinations is your child is getting a vaccine once every 60 days. So just by statistics alone, 1 out of 60 bad things that happens to happen the day you get your shots. And 1 out of 30 happen within 24 to 48 hours, and then 1 out of 20 happen between 48 and 72 hours. So that means 5% of all bad things that happen within 3 days of getting a shot. Now, if it's a car wreck or something, we normally don't blame the shots because we kind of think we understand how car wrecks work. But if a child has a new onset seizure the day they get their shot, our brain immediately says, shots caused it. A lot of that is because of the way your brain works. Things that we understand. Things that we don't understand, we've evolved where we look at what are called temporal relationships. That means what happened right around the time that the other event happened. For instance, if you have a chocolate chip cookie and then Bob comes over, and when Bob's gone, the chocolate chip cookie's gone, probably Bob took it. That was a good temporal relationship, and it helps us figure out a lot of things that we don't understand. But it doesn't always work. An example would be if we look at the number of car wrecks that happen on the day you get your shot, and then we look at all the number of car wrecks that happen every other day, we can see that pretty much the same number of car wrecks happen every day. And it's a way of proving that the shots didn't cause the car wrecks. The same thing is true of seizures. You can look and see that the number of new onset seizures that occur happens every day, not just the day that you get your shots. Now, that's fine, but it doesn't really help the poor family that their child has a seizure the day they got their shot. I'm here to tell you there's no way to convince that family that the shots didn't cause it. I've had doctors' families who know a lot about medicine and they know a lot about statistics. And if their child has had a new onset seizure or something like that happen around the vaccine, they come and they tell me it is impossible for us not to think that that's what caused it. Even though they know it's not true, it's impossible not to feel that way. Now, the poor family where that happens, this is a terrible thing that's happened in their world, and they don't want that to happen to you. And so they get evangelical and get on the internet and tell you what's happened to them to help prevent the same thing from happening to you. So it's really a very noble thing for them to be doing to try to help protect you from the pain that they're experiencing. It just doesn't make it true. So we have a lot of stories of things that have happened that just aren't necessarily true. You know, as a general rule, no one just wants God to have chosen their child to have a problem. And so we reject that as an option. We want to look for some other outside cause that may have made this bad thing occur. And medicine is a pretty easy target, you know, partially because we tell you what we give to your child. You know, I have a ton of smart parents, and I see them lined up down the street at the taco hut, waiting for their tacos, and they go and they eat as many as they can, and even the people that work there don't know what's in that thing. So we put things in our body all the time that our body does really pretty well with, even though there are small amounts of foreign substances, but it doesn't usually cause our bodies any problem. So if we're going to make this decision about vaccinations, where are we going to get good information? Turns out that perhaps our neighbor and the internet's not the best choice. So I'll give you some pointers. First, find someone who loves science. You have experience from this going back to high school. If you had a complicated scientific problem and you had the option of either going to the cool kid cheerleader table or going over to the geek nerd table, you learned at a pretty early age that while it was more fun to talk to the cheerleaders, if you really had a complicated science problem, it was probably better to go over to the nerd table. So find you someone that loves science. Second, find someone who's taken care of some ill children. Find someone who's taken care of some of these illnesses and who has suffered and seen these children damaged or die. Because if you don't find someone with that kind of experience, then you're just finding folks that are telling you what you want to hear. You know, the idea that this is some plot with the doctors and the big pharmaceutical companies, you know, against the regular people, that doesn't really sell with me. I've been fortunate to take care of a lot of doctors' families over the years, and every one of those doctors has brought their children in to get every one of those vaccines for all of their children. Sometimes even when a new vaccine came out, sometimes they've even come in earlier than their next visit to make sure that their child got it as quickly as they possibly could. So you're talking about a group of people who have the most exposure to the most science about these vaccinations. You're talking about the group of people that has the most experience taking care of these illnesses and people that have the consequences of them. And that group has gotten all the vaccines for all their children. So if it were a plot of doctors against the regular people, I think we would at least spare our own children from this plot. So it's not a plot. We all get the vaccines for all of our own children. You know, the other thing is, I've never seen a case of polio. And any doctor, if you have a doctor under the age of 50, they've probably never seen a case of Haemophilus influenza type B. When I was a resident, I worked in the hospital that saw more children than any other hospital in the country. And it was a busy place. And we put someone in the ICU almost every night with one of these illnesses that are now preventable by vaccines. And we spent the whole night trying to keep the children from being permanently damaged or dying. And those were miserable nights for everyone. And some of those children didn't survive, and some were permanently disabled. And the way I look at it now, it was so hard for those parents and for the docs to deal with that. If that had been at a time that those illnesses could have been prevented by vaccine, and those children had those illnesses when the parents could have given the vaccine, I'm just not sure that the parents and the doctors could live with that kind of decision. So if you're doing research, don't consider your research complete if you haven't talked to someone who's taken care of children who've had these illnesses and or taken care of children who have dealt with the disabilities that they then carry with them for the rest of their lives. So in my view, vaccines are one of the best things that science and medicine has ever created. It's a very natural way to teach your body to make antibodies against disease. So much better than something like antibiotics, where antibiotics are really just, poisons that don't quite kill us. Lysol kills germs, but it kills us too, so that's a poison. Some things kill germs but don't quite kill us. We call those things antibiotics. And even though those are touted as a great thing, If I could have either antibiotics or vaccines, I would choose to keep vaccines. It's a much better way, and going forward in the future, medicine will be much more utilized than antibiotics will be. So also in my experience, I've given over 100,000 vaccines and never had any problems. I've had lots of problems in my career with these illnesses and with the damage that they've caused. And so for me, there's not even a question. The advantages of the vaccine versus the damage from the illness, it's an easy choice for me. So if this discussion is enough to make it where you feel good about vaccines and you don't need to know any more about it, I think that's great. And try not to worry. If you have more questions, good sources would be either the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which is, I guess on the internet is chop.edu, has assembled a lot of good data about vaccinations that you might look at. If you'd like for me to help you understand better why vaccines won't hurt you, I have another video on how vaccines work and why they won't hurt you, and you might want to look at that. Otherwise, I hope this helps.